Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday. We have another edition of the MSP Initiative Live. And yeah, it's a full week after the 4th of July shenanigans with everything that's happening in our industry. I see my favorite buddy Darren on the line, Mr. Chick-fil-A. I might have to bring him in on the call soon. But some housekeeping for everyone that I guess never does these calls or forgets, but just gonna throw it out there anyway. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. We have Channel Strong Tour that starts in 6 days. So if you are in the Northeast, we would love to see you. Cost you absolutely nothing other than a couple of hours of your time, maybe a little bit of gas. But we are going to be going through the Northeast over 2 weeks. And, hopefully the weather's nice and grab a little bit of good summertime hangout and good conversation and a few beers, right? So definitely scroll down to the bottom and register for what location you are if you're an MSP. And also, don't forget to throw your name in the hat for this month's MSP giveaway. We have 10 vendors here. Again, cool prizes. If you don't enter, you can't win. Costs you nothing. And lastly, this session and every other session we've ever recorded is on the sessions page of MSPinitiative.com. You can fast forward, rewind, download, pause, and take funny memes, I guess. But they're all there. So all of that being said, today is going to be an open forum. Actually, I see two guys on the line that I think would be actually very, very intriguing. So since Keith raised his hand, I'm gonna add you into the mix there, Keith. You can unmute when you want. I'm gonna throw Darren in there if he feels like talking today. We're just gonna have an open conversation day. No playing guests today. We're just gonna talk shop. And Keith, of course, you already said, are there prizes for VIP tickets to Cowboys training camp? Well, you know how that works, right? You got to buy first, training camp tickets second.
Sounds good.
Well, I mean, they split their training camp, right? So you get to see them in California.
Yeah, we go every year. In fact, except for the years they were canceled. A couple of years ago, I went with my son, and Dak Prescott signed a jersey, a helmet, and a football form. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Very nice.
And yeah. And 100%. So he got a lot of signatures. And of course, we've watched America's only sports franchise, which is always good.
Well, I mean, they're not the only sports franchise. I mean, let's face it, Dak Prescott's probably making more money from his endorsement deal right now than his NFL contract.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I mean, I appreciate people that pay attention to the fans and know where they came from. Not like Elliot, but that's a different story.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Darren, you going to join us today? I know we love, you love that Chick-fil-A photo for lunch, huh?
I probably shouldn't. I think I should just remain silent, actually.
I don't know. You're not silent any other day of the week.
I don't know. Maybe I'll chime in on something.
Okay. All right. Well, how about this? Well, why don't we start with this, right? I never had a chance to go back and rewatch or go through any of the documents that were sent out, but sounds like you sat in on Dado's, listen to how we handle security day. What were the highlights from that? Yeah, I know you were on like 2 sessions there,
right? I think they did a great job. I mean, one, the fact that, they kind of had to do something, I think, which it was just reassuring to hear what I had felt was just a very serious security stance, particularly, from Ryan there. He really, he just gets it more than most that I've heard talk about it. I mentioned to you when we were looking to switch to Datto RMM and looking at other options, including another one I'm very happy we didn't switch to. He, and we had a concern about, hey, our backups are with Datto and we're going to switch to potentially your RMM, and what can you tell us about that? And there was a lot that he actually did. That was last February before everything went crazy. So he's remained kind of very adamant about mandating 2FA. There are RMMs that don't do that, which is bad for everybody. I mean, that's the whole gist of this situation, pretty obviously, is that this is just bad for all of us. So, anything that could be done to improve or reduce the risk collectively, it should be done. And, there was talk, their RMM has a ransomware detection built in that is not enabled by default, or the process killer isn't, or something like that. And there was conversation there about, hey, just make that mandate, make that be part of what has to be on. And again, to kind of help all of us have less risk. So I think they did a really good job. And they had, all the right people on the call. There was really good conversation in the chats and the Q&A. So it was refreshing to see, being, we've been with Datto since 2012. And, with, yeah, it's just nice to see them responding. And yeah.
So it definitely reassured you that you made some, a good choice in your Datto investment, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest takeaway, which was that they have to communicate, or they should communicate better about some of the security stuff that they're doing that they may not necessarily have communicated yet. And I mean, given now the massive, nationwide spotlight on this stuff, it's imperative that some of us have better levels of comfort. Our clients are asking us, hey, what's RMM? Can we get rid of this? Do we have this? What's our risk? I mean, we've had, I had that happen last week like crazy. And this is a paradigm shift from all the others for people that are paying any bit of attention, which again, I don't want to state the obvious, but that's how it's felt for us. So.
No, it's well said. Keith, what's your position? There's been people that come out this past week and a half saying, well, you can run your technology business without an RMM solution. I said, oh, well, that's interesting. It sounds like a lot of work. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think we're running into something that to me is intriguing. Number one is, are we vendor dependent, or are we technology consultants that know our business? And that's always an argument we have. And I sit on the opposite side of the fence of most people. I go to events and people talk about, what's my vendor going to give me? What's the marketing my vendor's going to give me? And my answer is always sarcastic, because I tend to be that way. I go, oh, I didn't know your vendor owned stock in your business. So I look at this and say, for some people that are brokering services, which is a profitable business, I mean, that's some people's business model, I think they're dependent on their vendors to provide what they lack in technical expertise. When you're doing a consultative, value-added business process-based delivery, then this is your responsibility, and you should, you should be digging it. One of the big things, I teach some classes, not as much as I used to, but on security. And I said, number one, people buy the biggest scam in our industry. One of them, there's many. They buy firewalls and they go, we're done. And you go, by the way, when was the last time you actually read your firewall for 6 months has been telling you you're under attack, but you have no idea how to read those logs. You have no idea where your traffic should and shouldn't come from. So, same with antivirus. People, you go, are you really looking at what that's telling you? What are the trends in what your users are doing? But we don't really sell, I guess it depends on your business model. If you sell technology, that's one thing. If you want to sit in the room and say, I'm smarter than you, that's one way to sell. But I think you have to tie these things more closely into the business processes, whether you're engineering or re-engineering for your clients, and make this part of the culture and the business flow. I'm opposed by most people. I go, your customer, you say, let's talk about ransomware. And he says, no, let me talk about sales, because that's what pays my bills. And so
yeah,
I think
you have worked backwards from that. Yeah. I mean, so when you go in and you do this consulting, Keith, and you say, I really strongly recommend that you do this based on whatever your analysis is, whatever your conversation is, are you lining it up so that customer that you're consulting with is paying for that directly outside of you being in the middle of that transaction? Or how do you present that?
Well, first of all, we don't do peers or bronze, gold, silver. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. I go through there and say, why would I buy your gold when you're selling me a bronze, which you obviously think is good enough because it wouldn't be on your menu if it wasn't. So every solution is interwoven into business value into the customer. So I don't talk about 2FA per se, because that's boring. I mean, what do I want to prove? I'm technically smart. I talk about how we're going to enhance the login process for the salespeople on the road to create single sign-on and make their job more effective and efficient. When we talk about ransomware and viruses and that type of thing, it's not in the context of this is the technical stuff that can happen behind the scenes. It's the fact that, can you afford for your sales email to be blocked because you're a spammer? And so we try and tone it in the fact of what is the effect on the business, because our model is our customer is our customer's customer.
It's actually true. That's a very true point. I mean, let me ask you this, because now that we're seeing a couple of interesting trends, I'll take both of you. I'm happy to hear your opinion on it. It's like the double ransom, they call it, right? Not only could they hold you hostage and then try and get you to pay to get your stuff unlocked, but they're also saying, hey, if you don't pay us, we're going to take your business data or your critical information that they originally kind of encrypted. We're going to put it out there in the wild, right? It could be competitive information, could be customer information. I mean, that's actually that could even be more scary, right, than how long it takes you to bring your system back online.
It's only now, George, let me just jump in, because that's been happening since the end of 2019, and it's still kind of sporadically talked about, particularly with those that are, well, don't pay ransoms, you're encouraging the situation, what's wrong with you? I mean, there's no answer there, or there's no option there in most businesses that would you pay to prevent that, or would you not? Because it can end many businesses. I mean, that's what's not, it's not handled or communicated clearly enough. And it's very frustrating, because I look at the client base we have, and a lot of them are small businesses, some with a proprietary product or whatever it might be. And, it's like that stuff gets out there and is just made available, they're done. And, in almost every single case, you're going to pay to prevent that. So it's something that I hope becomes totally understood more so than it is, than it is today. So,
but you look at that, that's a variant on an old problem. And the old problem was most of that theft happened inside. And so you're going, well, for the longest time, people have been technologically lazy. You're going, not only do you need to block people from accounting, you have to make sure they don't even see the folder to tempt them. So it has been a lazy way to implement technology, saying we need to really look at the layers and see, you need to see what you need to see to do your job in the most effective way we can, honoring security, and quit opening these holes. And you look at that, you're going, someone could steal the castle because the castle had no drawbridge. And so you have to start layering it. People don't implement. We walk in, you go, you have no VLANs, you have no division. You just said, come on in when you want to come in, take whatever you want.
Interesting. So I think more now than ever, my bigger worry is, with, work from every, the Corona commercial came to life, right? Hey, I'm on the beach. I'm in somewhere tropical and I'm working, right? Well, I don't know how well, but you're trying to at least make it look right. But I mean, isn't the bigger security threat what's happening out on the road, right? At least within the corporate firewall, of the network, you can at least control some stuff, right? When you're in airports, when you're out in the street, when you're sharing Wi-Fi, I mean, who knows what the hell's going on there? I mean, if there's got to be something that happens, don't you think it's going to happen there first? I mean, why not?
Well, challenge that. You say, I challenge any MSP, for lack of a better word, I hate that word, to go through your client list and say, how many people are connecting to the corporate network externally that really don't need to?
Mm-hmm.
They could be getting their email a different way. They could be sharing files, the limited files they need to share, a different way. And you could be scanning those as they go in and out of the network quite effectively and efficiently. It was just some client said, I want a VPN so I could work remotely. And we said, oh, do you want fries with that? And we just took orders. And you're saying, well, no, that's not what they said. They said, I want to do my work remotely. You just weren't listening.
That's fair. I mean, sometimes it's the easy thing to do, right? And I think that's part of that's part of the challenge, right? Like, not every engineer is created equal. There's different varying levels of knowledge. Obviously, you lean on upstream vendors because you're not going to build it all on your own. But I think part of the problem, like going back, and I know it's not the most recent event, but the Colonial Pipeline event, they're saying that the person's account that was compromised was no longer with the company. It wasn't now just his email account, because that wasn't necessarily on site, but it was his VPN account is what really, opened up the door, right? And the password was the same, and that person was no longer with the organization. It was probably a password that was compromised from something he was using personally, right? You know, all those big platforms that you always get notices about, that scrape all those usernames and passwords. So I guess from day zero, right, is like there's been all this effort around eliminating the password, right? Keith, you mentioned SSO. I mean, obviously 2FA and MFA, obviously, like, we're hearing insurance companies are like, if you don't have this turned on, we're not covering you. But when do we get past the password? Because I feel like that is the weakest link, other than obviously the person using it.
Well, let's go back to your pipeline example. What does that scream to you? Technology was walking around with their cape going, we solve problems, we save the world. And they weren't involved in the ongoing business. They weren't part of the business unit. You're going, how did you not know someone was terminated if you created the business flow? So you go, that's functionally wrong. Or someone said, Joe is going to be terminated, but I need to access his files. So they said, well, just let you use his username and password instead of doing it the correct way. So you're going, again, it's back to the example of lazy or uneducated IT. And we always talk about, you need to have this bag of tricks on your side, which is good. But one of the things you have to have in your bag of tricks is someone that understands business. My business partner is an MBA from Pepperdine. You know what? I wouldn't let him touch my cell phone. Hope he's not watching your broadcast. He is technically at that level. And I go, by the way, he won't let me touch a checkbook, so we're even. But you're going, that's his expertise, is he just says, I'm just looking at the business flow of this. So it's a matter of making.
It's interesting that you say that, because especially in the large corporate conglomerates where there's thousands of employees potentially, I mean, you could, like, we hear about shadow IT all the time, right? I mean, people who are in management positions just buy stuff. And you don't even find out about it until the credit card bill comes in, right? Maybe.
Well, that's only because you're not involved you're not enhancing the process. You're walking around saying, I'm smarter than you. When someone asks you a question, you look down on them. I mean, think about all the IT guys, right? We think we're a Marvel comic book hero. We can save the world. Having, I was lucky enough early in my career to work with a gentleman named Ray Lane. He was, when he was second in charge at Oracle, an angel investor, I was the technology consultant. And he told me, let me tell you something. You get in a room and sales and marketing's asking for something, and you're telling me an expense you want to spend, because all you guys want to do is buy toys, you'll lose every time. So you have to sell IT as part of a business enhancement tool. So you've developed this process to offload people to help HR, not to regulate HR. And it's just in the optics, you're doing the same thing. But when you go in there and say, I'm going to help you with your job, I'm going to enhance the process. I'm going to automate terminating an employee. And so
there are some cool platforms out there that do help automate onboarding and offboarding, right? Like HR puts a new employee into the system, the offer letter signed, it creates their 365 account, their Zoom account, they're this, they're that, and then it can shut all of them off when they get shut down, right? I mean, that's kind of more modern day way, right? Where IT's like develop the answer, but they're not necessarily pressing a button every time.
Well, yeah, you know, I laugh because, you know, we all have the same problem. I have someone that started up and they go, he didn't get the phone. And then he goes, you didn't ask for a phone. But the real answer is, I'm going to create some templates. I mean, you could do that in a simple RMM. Yeah. I'm going to create some templates so that we always make HR look good. So the guy sits down at his desk and IT's there with him saying, hey, welcome to the company. Let me show you how to log into all the systems. And an employee hits the ground running. And what, you know what else? He thinks the company values it. There's a value business proposition there. If you walked into work today and you sat there, your name's on the door, your desk is ready, your email's set up, you're going, they really want me here. Versus, can I have a phone, please?
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's just an optics of selling that. And it's through enhancement of business flow.
So we had the question come in, hey, what are platforms that do that? This is one of them, by the way. You know, where basically they tie into all of these different apps, right? Across all the different departments within the company. And then as you start to onboard and offboard employees, this is really an HR platform, right? That has all this technology automation in there. This is one of the ones that pops up to the top. And there's many options, right? But you ask the question, what's the name of one of them? This would be one of them, right? Where your HR department is basically just interacting with this as they're onboarding, offboarding for payroll and hiring I-9s, all that stuff. And then all their IT onboarding, offboarding from an app standpoint, automated. So
yeah, David, every provider should have, again, in their bag of tricks besides the business guy, is understand system integration and be able to say, oh, okay, you have this, I could integrate it with that, no problem. And understand data integration.
Well, hold on a second. And I'm sure Darren would love to pipe in here, right? Now, integrations are only as good as when they're working. And number two, if there's a security incident, you might need to turn those integrations off, right? I mean,
that's why you write them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people don't have the technical know-how on staff to do those handshakes, right? They're leaning on predefined, prepackaged integration apps, right? Kind of like Rippling, right? Where you sign in and it does your authentication and it says, this is the permissions that you have and you're off and running, right?
You don't have to know how to do it. You just have to have the resources to help you.
Sure. Absolutely.
And that's, I mean, you could be a one-man shop with the correct partnerships and providing the correct level of service.
100%. 100%.
I mean, we did Boeing C-17 as a 5-person company. Yeah,
that's true. You did say that. Five people to do a big company like that. I mean, well, how many people, because at this point it doesn't matter about the technology, but how many people were included as part of that opportunity, like that you had to support?
The shop floor for Boeing, I think we were supporting between all the shifts about 4,000 workers between Long Beach and Macon.
That's a lot of people. Yeah. That's a lot of people. David, I'm going to actually let you, if you want to chime in, you can actually unmute yourself and chat if you want.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I was just following along. It's an interesting discussion, but that's one of our challenges. Obviously, we're trying to elevate the value we bring to any client. So the more we can go deeper and integrated with how they work in their organization, with their processes and essential ways of working, the better value opportunity there is for us and the more sticky we get with them. So I think we're always looking to see how we can kind of add something beyond the norm, be more specialist in their environment. But the onboarding, offboarding isn't something I would say that we've cracked. There's so many things and parts to that process that I was interested, that you mentioned that before with the rippling example, because, we're trying to do it with some of it with SSO and sort of directories, cloud-based directory services to kind of get rid of people quickly or add people quickly and have them accessing devices and machines quickly or services or applications. But I don't really see it as being a very mature space right now. I'm not sure that it's that smart yet. So
at the enterprise level, it's been something that's been out there for quite some time. The question is, has it come down from the, the multi-thousand person companies to the, sub 500 person company, right? I mean, the cool part is, and like you said, right, there's identity is kind of the new firewall. That's not my term, right? We've had some smart people on, on the show, like, Brian Burton from Pax8 mentioned in his security session we did. Identity is like, like the SaaS is the new, software, right? And like you could run your entire business SaaS based and never have to install a single piece of software, never have to have a VPN or file share, right? I mean, the whole thing could be SaaS, right? Which means that the authentication point to you, the individual. So if I shut your main switch off, then everything underneath of you, also kind of turns off, right? So, but to your point, right? Like, I think in IT, there's so much time invested in getting people to a point where they're functional and turning people down after they're gone, that there's probably a large time investment there, right?
Definitely. No, it's an interesting space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, feel free to jump in as we talk about different topics. Keith, I mean, sure. Let me ask you this question since, you've dealt with the corporate America, red tape kind of stuff. When you get into these larger organizations, communication becomes a lot harder to do, right? Like, the people up top that are the check signers may not even be the people on the day-to-day that are interacting with the last guy on the, the lowest man of the totem pole who's actually doing the work. So, how have you made it successful for you to be able to communicate with 4,000 people? Is there ever a situation where you'd have to broadcast something in mass like that?
Yeah, I'd say the first step, by the way, is a little more remedial than that. Is we talk. You go to a lot of these MSP marketing and sales, and they talk about your presentation when you get in the boardroom, and that's where I kind of step back and go, "You're losing." Your presentation in the boardroom should be your ears, not your mouth. So we got the ports of LA because much bigger companies, IBM, Perot System, so on, that were bidding, were walking in and telling the union how to do their job. We walked in and said, tell us what you want. Tell us how you do your job, because you're better at your job than we are. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is, you want to listen and listen closely. And you get up to the boardroom by having the right education, the right credentials, the right background, the right wins in your history. And more importantly, the fact that the bottom layer is telling the upper layer, you guys made a good choice. These people are helping us out. These people are streamlining processes. These people sit down with our departments and say, what do you need? How can we help you? What's your business flow? Not, here, I got some new rules for you.
Yeah. Let me, Darren, you still with us out there, buddy? Hopefully, eating some good lunch somewhere.
I'm here. I'm here. Yep.
Darren, let's jump onto a topic that we talked about a little bit the other day. Let's talk about insurance. Clearly, the end customer may or may, unless we specifically ask, they probably don't have it, right? Unless they had a, I guess, really convincing sales agent from whoever they buy their business insurance from, right? But when it comes to all the cyber stuff going on, and obviously the insurance companies are starting to pay out some real money, right? To the point where they're starting to say, I don't know if we want to pay this anymore. How does that discussion with the end customer about, hey, we need to make sure that you have, like we talk about this all the time with technology, right? Well, you need to have a minimum requirements of X, Y, and Z in order for this to be successful. And if anything falls outside of that, it needs to be brought up to standard. I mean, the same conversation now kind of has to happen with cyber liability and cyber coverage and ransomware and all of that other, kind of, let's call it cyber criminals, right? Coming in, wreaking havoc. So how's that, just not putting names to anything, right? But like, as you started to talk to your customers about this topic, how has it gone, right? I mean, are these people interested in the topic, or they're like, yeah, we should be covered? Or is it like, no, we're good, that's what we have you for?
No, it's an easier conversation to have than it's ever been in the last, what's happened just in the last 3 months. Really, since Colonial has this become almost daily, mainstream news occurrence in some way, shape, or form. I mean, forgetting even about what happened with Kaseya. I mean, it was happening before that. So it's become easier to certainly just cite some, well-written articles about why this is so important. And you can't, as much as you want to say you rely on us to protect you, we're doing our best. We're doing everything we can physically do. There's still that percentage risk that something, you need to have coverage for. So it's become an easy conversation. Now it's just a matter of, hoping the insurers don't decide to, make it prohibitive, which is, I think, ultimately going to happen, or just get out of this line of insurance because of, I mean, the dust hasn't settled yet at all. And from what my insurance person tells me, it's lots of changes are coming. So, and none of them being good for us.
Have you run into, like, we've heard it from a lot of MSPs over the last couple of weeks, hey, if you don't have MFA turned on, or if you don't have this security thing done correctly, we're dropping you. Like, you need to sign to this saying that it's on. Have you run into that yet? Because I've heard from now probably 6 people that they've had end customers come to them out of the blue, unprovoked, no conversation prior, saying, hey, I need you to sign this letter. What does it say? And it's this, that they actually have to have this. They're being enforced at the insurance level upstream to have to turn this stuff on.
I think that's happening even with their general business insurance, not even specifically cyber policies. You're going to start to see, because basically you'll have people trying to, to make claims anyway, even if it's not a cyber specific policy. I think you're going to start to see a lot stricter mandating of that stuff. As you said, it's happening now, and I think it's going to continue to.
What is the average recommended coverage amount, right? I mean, is it $1 million? Is it $5 million? I mean, I'm sure every business is different, right? And you got to price it appropriately, but like, is it some crazy number? Like, what's the average you're hearing out there?
I don't have a good answer to that. I'm no expert in this. It's just from the few experiences I've had recently. Yeah. So maybe, I don't have a good answer to that.
That's all right. Keith, what's your opinion on this topic? Are you running into this?
Well,
is this conversation coming up?
Well, first of all, you realize insurance companies are for-profit companies.
Oh, so, yeah.
I mean, that's and you have to, they're always going to make more than the risk. That's their job. That's what they do. But in our latest conversations with such couple, including travelers, which is considered to be strict, is we've kind of switched the dialogue. And with 3 underwriters, they've been kind of thrown back. We say, we have processes in effect that will allow this business to function while we recover. We have manual processes. And that's an important part that a lot of MSPs seem to miss. And it's a very profitable venture by not only being valuable, where you have to sit down with your client and say, if you get hacked, I'm not coming in, I'm not flying in with my cape. We're going to move to simple manual processes, and we're going to allow you to function as a business. And so what the insurance companies are looking at is, number one, what's their exposure to pay a ransom if they have to, how you're mitigating that exposure, and what is the business loss? And that comes to your general business policies. Are you protecting your client against actual business loss? Example, you have a hotel, and we've gone to this example, George. So, and the computer systems are down, they're hacked, the power's off, whatever occurred, can that hotel put butts in beds and sell meals while that's being fixed? Answer that question and you're limiting their exposure.
How I mean, it's very interesting to me, right? The bean counter, actuarial, underwriter people. How do you put a value to what the data is, right? I mean, you could be, a research and development company and have IP data. You could be a financial company and have financial data. You could be some sort of healthcare outfit and have, protected health data, or you could just be some guy selling iced tea on the corner, right? I mean, it's just very, intriguing to me how they decide what the value of the data that you hold is.
Well, one of the questions they'll ask you is, how have you segmented the data? How many people have clients that have file storage, period? It's got the last 20 years history of that company.
Oh, yeah.
One, and you're going like, if you've gone through and say, no, we've segmented it. This is active. These are archives. Each one's firewalled and protected. By the way, the guy in sales who has no business looking at our sales from 5 years ago has no access to it. So part of the mitigation effort is, have you properly segmented storage, and again, made it less of a one-stop shop for anyone that wants to steal your data? Have you made different loopholes? Are there different layers? And so the value of a data, I don't even know how you'd figure that out. I mean, that's I don't know if insurance is really doing that, or go with the normal, you're breached, you're probably going out of business.
So quick question. So what are you seeing as typical insurance coverage for cyber incidents or cyber situation? Because, I think we're about $1 million at the moment, but, it's, I think that number is going to get, challenged and start to get challenged a lot more frequently. And to George's point before, we're definitely seeing, we've got 3 situations in the last few days where we're getting asked, about the same questions George mentioned, what's your coverage, what's your policy, are we, where do we sit in the risk profile, what's your statement on ransomware, what's your situation, how, what's your plan for paying ransomware, recovery plan.
People are getting, I mean, listen,
everybody's spoofed.
The last couple of weeks have really started putting people into a position where the service provider, the IT company, right, has to ask their upstream vendor, talk to me about what's in place, right? Just like Darren said, right? He sat in on, data sessions. He's like, if I start parking multiple services with you, what does that look like? But it's interesting now you bring to the table, David, that the end customer is now savvy, right? The end customer is starting to ask the same questions. If nothing other than they want to know that there's coverage. But there's one critical piece that I always have to remind people about insurance, right? Your coverage as the MSP may ultimately help the person that you're servicing downstream, but they're probably going to have to sue you to get to it. And that's a very bumpy conversation.
There's 2 questions we're answering, or I heard maybe. One of them is, how much protection do we have as an MSP?
Mm-hmm.
And that, my answer to that, very simplified, would be, what will you sell me your business for? How deep are your pockets? So that varies by MSP to MSP.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you want protection before someone comes after you, even if you're a C Corp? And the next question is, to your customer, how much, we're going to, and you need to be honest with them, we're going to go back and forth. We're going to say, we told you to do these specific things, you didn't do them, so the liability's on you. You're going to probably use the unscrupulous advantage laws, depending on what state you're in, which say you knew better than us and you didn't advise us completely in our language. And we're both going to sue each other. We're going to send a couple attorneys, generations of kids to college, and we're both going to lose. And so the question to your client is, what's your contingent liability? Number one is, how much you're willing to walk away from your business for? Number two is, what do you have there? What are your customers going to sue you about? And so it's not, you're almost getting your own insurance and then helping your clients get theirs. And that's why I opposed the bronze. We went back to the bronze, silver, gold. You sold bronze, it doesn't protect your client. Who's liable? I think you are, because you knew that wasn't full coverage and you offered it.
If you're a Brad Gross listener or follower, he'll say, well, what does your MSA say? Because this is something you have to stipulate up front, right? Who's responsible for what? Because otherwise it does lean on you unless you limit your liability.
And that's where, and I respect Brad immensely. He's an attorney. I just watch legal shows, so he wins. But in California, they have that, again, that unscrupulous advantage law, which says, was it reasonable for your client to have read this? How deep is it hidden into your contract? And was it understandable by him? Now, besides legal, I think it's functionally dishonest to offer a product as a loss leader to get sales that doesn't do what needs to be done. So I think there's a fiduciary there too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's basic. I mean, I hate to put a word to it, but just so everybody listening can understand, like Vaporware, right? You sold something that was never going to give them the full, whatever it is that you want. And, just was enough to be called viable, but you're collecting money on it, right? So I call that a little bit of a Vaporware play. But I mean, but Keith, that happens all the time. That happens all day.
I know that's why I don't like to say I'm in this business. I think it's wrong. I really honestly think that's wrong. And I think you're teasing your customer. When you go in for a brake job and a guy goes better, best, greatest, and you start going like, will the low cost one stop my car? No. Well, then why is it on the list?
It's a good question. It's a good question. And by the time you realize that it was the wrong question or the wrong answer to your question, you may be may not be breathing, right? In that example, right. But it always comes back to the dollars and cents conversation, right? I mean, everybody's so afraid that their customer's going to say, nope, too expensive, shut it all off and I'll go find something somewhere else. And so they're always fighting towards the lowest cost play, if nothing other than to avoid I'm not going to pay this dollar amount conversation.
That's because you've commoditized your business. I'm going like, when people tell me that objection, I go, well, do you offer bronze, silver, gold? Yeah. Well, you put the blue light out. You told them everything's negotiable. Mm-hmm. And by the way, here's my price per unit or price per user. Please go shop me because that's your job as a procurement officer. So you've opened that door, and then I see MSPs and I see marketing experts and people smarter than me with their packages they're presenting, and they go, this occurred and we don't know why. And I go, you told them to. You said this is a commodity. You said go out there and ask people what's your price per unit and take the best price. And then you question why you're being challenged as, can you take this out? Can you take this out? Well, you've sold it that way. When the real answer is, I have evaluated your business. I've evaluated your processes. This is how much it costs for us to deliver what you need, period.
Mm-hmm. No, I get it. I mean, one of the things that has consistently come out from our time with Brad Gross, legal extraordinaire, has been, hey, legally speaking, are you protected? What's your liability? What's your risk? But from a business standpoint, and I like how you come a lot from that direction, Keith, what's the perception between you and your, like, what have you, set up so that your customer can either get happy about something or upset about something, right? What's the perception of what is or what isn't being offered? Because that's largely, according to Brad, where these legal disputes pop up, right? I thought I was getting I thought you were doing. I thought the protection was in place until it wasn't.
By the way, does anyone ever in business, and I've always wanted to ask Brad this question I've never gotten, does anyone ever really win a lawsuit?
I think they survived the lawsuit.
Right. So, your customer sued you. We all live in small communities where even the big world is divided into small communities. And he's walking around saying, that Keith guy, he screwed me. He just had a better attorney. Oh, well, I still haven't won. And so the answer is, to have honest relationships. And that's it.
No, that's true. 100% true.
Now, by the way, just for full disclosure, I'm not dismissing any fact that you need to follow prudent legal advice, and Brad provides good contractual advice.
For sure. But I mean, listen, there's the business outcome and there's the legal outcome. And sometimes they align and sometimes they don't. But here's the ultimate scenario, right? You have a contract with a legal firm. I wonder how that's going to turn out.
Yeah. That's entirely true. You're going.
And I know a few people that have gone the distance on that. And by the time it was done, it was like, why did we do this? Why did I even start down this path? So let me throw a curveball out there since it popped up this week. And I don't even know if it's really enforceable or not, but out of the White House came a executive order saying that non-competes will be eliminated, meaning they won't, they shouldn't be honored. They shouldn't be allowed. Now, of course, that executive order was for federal employees, right? I mean, I guess the question is whether that can be extrapolated down to everybody else. I know non-competes are in many states very hard to enforce. They're very narrow, which is different than a non-solicitation, right? So I'm curious what everybody's opinion is, especially in the technology realm, right? A lot of people claim intellectual property. A lot of people claim, customers, proprietary customer, type stuff. Do you think that's good or bad for our particular sandbox, our little industry?
First of all, I think it's federal protection to allow federal employees to turn into lobbyists. So I think it's bad on every front. And I think it has to be challenged on the intellectual property. We do develop software and we follow intellectual property pretty close. We have an IP attorney. And the prevailing law has basically been anything you develop with your employer's resources while on duty with your employer or paid by your employer belongs to your employer. Now, to breach that would mean I can go to work for Microsoft, develop Windows 11, and just start selling it on my own. That's concerning. Now, a straight non-compete, not involving intellectual property, which says, we parted ways and you can't go to work for someone that competes in my workplace. That's not as scary because, there's privateering laws in all kinds of states. There's customer list laws. It depends on the scope of what he's doing. Now, if he's saying I'm going to open the doors so you can depart my company as a salespeople, steal my Rolodex and my price structure and go solicit my customer base, that's concerning.
I would think that's probably the first, other than IP, which obviously can have value to it. The next thing after that is going to be your existing customer relationships, your agreements, right? Like how you're generating revenue. Darren, David, any opinions on this topic?
I don't have a strong opinion on this one way or the other, to be honest. So I'll opt out of this one.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's interesting, when you sign an agreement with your customer, right? A lot of the times you say, hey, listen, I'm a people-based organization, right? You can't hire my people, I can't hire your people kind of thing. And even that sometimes is hard to enforce, right? Like imagine you signed a deal, an agreement with your customer poaches one of your guys that was working on your team servicing that end customer. Right?
Sorry.
I have a funny story about that. I had a customer who we were not going to keep anyway, and she stole my tech, which is an agreement she couldn't. Anyway, after it was all said and done, she ended up paying about $140,000 a year for tech worth 60. And she said, "I'm really upset with you." And I said, "Why?" I said, "You're the one who stole my tech." And she said, "Yeah, the back and forth bidding raised his price so high." And I said, "Let me tell you the truth. As soon as he said, X hotel made us an offer, we said, good luck." I said, "So all the bidding you thought was going on never occurred. You got hosed." And a year later, she called and said, "Could we come back as your customer? Because he doesn't know everything we thought he knew."
Wow.
And so, that's just kind of my lessons. Go ahead and steal them.
Interesting.
Do what you need to do.
Very, 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 very interesting. I'm curious to know, moving forward, right? I mean, we're kind of in a lopsided situation. There are more jobs posted right now than there are people who are actively interviewing and looking for jobs. It's kind of the inverse of 2019, right? Before all hell broke loose. Is it harder now to find talent, or was it harder in 2019 to find talent? Has anyone been hiring recently?
I think it's a fact that most MSPs
do
not farm talent.
We have. We hired pretty recently in the last 8 weeks.
How'd it go? How was the process?
I was very pleased with the process. We actually looked at what we were trying to do. It was in the operations management space, and we brought in somebody from, interestingly enough, the FIT background, fashion industry.
Mm-hmm.
There was a product marketing person and operations person. So we brought them across from a different industry into IT. And then we just spent a little bit of time, 6 weeks, kind of onboarding and indoctrinating, quite a bit longer than I would hope. But, the relationships this person's putting together with clients are really strong, and they're doing some really good work. And they're being pretty creative with our stories that we want to tell our clients, and position us in a different way. I like what people are saying about all these packages, the way we're trying to always pecan things, and obviously that creates its own challenges. So we're trying to reassess some of that area as well, what we package things up as. So we found we got quite a lot of opportunity. There's a ton of people that we actually managed to review. There was like 12, which was pretty good. We've actually been using this current climate as well for sourcing abroad. So we're actually sourcing, we got 75 applicants for engineering work, level 3 engineer and a junior engineer. And we're actually looking at India for resources that can work remotely under the guidance of onshore level 3. So the idea would be a level 3 onshore would manage the relationship with the client and offload the technical complex work to the offshore team, and then kind of program manage it, so that we kind of offset the New York costs. So, sort of 135 plus for a senior engineer drops down to about $20,000, offshore for a 12-year experienced certified resource in India, say. So we're prepared to take the risk on with that. It depends what clients we're servicing as well, but if that is an option or not for them, because sometimes you can't obviously have people connecting to environments offshore to onshore. So we have to balance it out, but it's certainly a new model for us. I have offshored since 2000. I had a team of 600 people offshore at one point. So I'm kind of well experienced with getting those relationships to work. And then we've got a person offshore that started up the GE Capital Offshore Delivery Center for them, who's actually works with us. It's actually a friend of the family there that kind of helps us and guides us with the right sourcing options there, you know.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, like, I felt like offshoring was very popular in the like post 2008 financial crisis to about 2014, 2015. It was really going hard, strong. And then things flipped around, right? The incentive was to hire domestically, right? And it looks like it might be turning back the other way.
What's interesting is I would describe it as an experiment. You know, we're in a scaling position at the moment, and what we don't want to do is offset profitability, you know, to hire, you know, a bunch of new folks. So we want to try and at least balance it a little bit more in our favor, you know.
So we're really limited on what we can offshore because a lot of our work goes through Homeland Security.
Yeah, of course.
And so, and then there's I think saying, you know, it's all local talent helps with your non-security customers like local hotels and so on. We've always built a funnel of prospects because I still have teaching credentials at some, I don't know, I think it's a good institute, Caltech. And so I've always harvested off there. And then I also write the curriculum for the University of California for their cybersecurity and other classes and certifications, so that when I do a guest speaking, you know, I can go and harvest what the people that ask the right questions and seem like the best talent. So, and I think that motivates people that want to work with us based on the white papers I wrote at school and you know, that kind of thing. We're more in common.
I mean, listen, there's no question that that's a great pool. I mean, it's a farming situation though, right? I mean, very, very rarely does somebody come out of, you know, university education having had no background prior, and you know, they're immediately hitting the ground running as serviceable engineers, right? Usually it, like a lot of industries, like you almost need to like put the textbook knowledge on the shelf for a second and learn how things really happen. Right? I mean, so, but I mean, pulling from the university level is awesome, right? Especially if you're able to kind of not get whatever left over through the job program kind of thing.
You want to pull through a university that has a good intern program. Some of them are just teaching books and you pull them out and the guy doesn't know how to talk to people. So I'm pulling people from the Jet Propulsion Lab, where they're you know, they're getting their master's, their doctorate, working with NASA, and they're working on meaningful projects. And so, because that's where I taught at, and so they come out really with a real good technical base. The hardest thing really is to teach them our tool set, which is kind of the reverse, you know, to teach them the Datos and the you know, Autotask and the AVIX and all those things, because they were using a more sophisticated tool set.
Yeah, they're using Cisco this or something enterprise level, right? 100%.
Right.
Guys, it's been fun. It was actually cool. We kind of brought into the topics today. Obviously, from last week, it was a little very targeted. Let's hope things stay a little bit quiet for a little bit, right? So we can kind of ground everything again, and hopefully not have the next incident be so soon. But this session was totally recorded, by the way, like every other session, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time. You can go back to mspinitiative.com under sessions, and you can hear Keith talk all the time about stuff that makes a lot of sense. And of course, other people like Darren, who still is blowing me out of the water on Chick-fil-A points, but one day I might catch up to him.
I'll have 80K tomorrow, baby.
Wow. One day, Darren, I might catch up to you. I might have to eat a whole lot more Chick-fil-A, but it's a challenge. All right, guys. I hope you guys have a great couple days, and hopefully we'll see you back here on Thursday. Have a good one.
All right, great. Thank you.